You're listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast with Jody Livingston and Chris Trent, episode number 86.
Welcome to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast, helping you survive and thrive in youth ministry. And now, your hosts, Jody Livingston and Chris Trent.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the show today. Thanks for tuning in and listening wherever you are and wherever this finds you. Thanks for making this podcast today a part of your day. If it's your first time listening to the show, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you. And
I love new people. New people are awesome.
Amazing. We like
new people
them.
are amazing. Welcome.
Welcome, new people. And if you're not new people, we love you too. And we're glad you are here for sure. Show notes today for this episode will be at thelongerhaul.com/episode 086. Thelongerhaul.com/episode 086. Of course, if you're enjoying the show, make sure you subscribe to it wherever you're listening. So be that iTunes or Google Play or Spotify or I don't know, wherever else you might be listening. You should subscribe so you get it each and every time it comes out.
It's a good plan. Subscribing, it makes it easy because it just pops up on your little phone there, like all big time. It's cool like that.
Yeah.
That's what I do for my podcast that I listen to. They just
make it easy. Up. That's what we want to do. We just want to make it easy.
Because all my podcasts are like Disney and magic. But,
and
I got a couple of the youth ministry. Yeah, but yeah. That and Annie F. Downs. I mean, I can't help myself. But yeah, she's awesome.
Do you cry when you listen to her podcast?
Golly, dude, she's really good. I may get to meet her. She doesn't know this yet. I've never met her before. She's coming to do. She's coming to do a women's ministry event here.
She doesn't know she's going to get to meet you. That's great.
Yeah, if somebody knows her, this is going to be really creepy. But she's coming and she is doing a women's ministry event. And I already spoke with one of the girls. I'm like, hey, listen, you got to introduce me to Annie F. Downs. People that aren't listening are going, who's Annie F. Downs? If they don't know who she is, because she's good. Anyway,
we should have her on the podcast.
So, I may try. It'd be good. Yeah, so that's Jody I'm talking to there. Jody is a youth pastor in California. What's the most California thing you're doing lately, by the way? Like, what's the most California thing you've sold out to?
Oh, I don't know. Well, I mean, we go to the beach a lot. I say a lot. We go quite a bit. We go. I mean, we're a few hours away, but we drive down often.
Yeah.
I ate a lot of tacos, man. But I did that before I moved here.
Yeah, true.
I really like tacos. Hey, did you see the picture I sent you, by the way?
Which one?
I sent you a picture of a restaurant that we were driving past.
Oh, yeah.
You never responded, so I didn't know if you got it. Because we always talk about Chewy's, which is like our favorite.
It is.
And they don't have that here. They don't have Chewy's here. So that restaurant looked like a Chewy's, but it was called Chevy's. So it was like, if you take the U and the V and you swap
them. Did you go? I've been to eight Chevys before, and the Chevy's pretty good.
Yeah, it was closed. It wasn't open. It wasn't open anymore. It was abandoned. Yeah. Probably because it should have been a Chewy's.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I love Mexican food.
Anyway.
Ain't no lie. So Jody's a youth pastor around in California. I'm a youth pastor here in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia area, and we've both been doing it for a little while. So we do this podcast just as a way to reach out and help folks. So thanks for being here. You can find Jody at Jody Livingston on social media. You can find me at Chris Trent on social media as well. We're all over the place. If you watch me, get ready for a lot of Disney because that's my life. So man. So what's going on? Man? How's life?
Well, you were in Disney.
I was.
You were there for
you're going to ask about this because
I was following along.
You were. So my wife had a birthday in February, and we went down for a few days. We are currently annual pass holders, and so we went down for a few days. She had never been on her birthday. She'd been close, but never, on her birthday. And my son, he's 18, my daughter's 15, and we decided to do something a little nuts this year. We decided to make ourselves a challenge for one of the days. So I pitched this idea to my family, and they bought in immediately. And we started developing this thing, but we created it's not new. We didn't create the idea, but we created our own version of it, though, which is our 4-park one-day challenge. So we did all 4 parks, Magic Kingdom, Animal Kingdom, Epcot, and Hollywood Studios, all in one day. But then we had these little rules, like, you got to ride 4 rides in each park, and you got to meet a character, and you got to eat food, and all these different things. And
like explain the pin swap to people who don't live in.
Yeah, so you had to swap a
whatever
pin, and
world
the
you
goal
live in.
there was, I didn't detail that out on the thing, but you can do pin trading at Disney. Like all the cast members, most of the cast members have pins, and if you have official Disney pins, you can just walk up and they have to trade with you, whatever they have on their little lanyard. So it's kind of fun. We used to do it when the kids were smaller, a whole lot more. We don't do it as much now, but I had that in there as a little bit of a challenge with the goal, though, of trying to find a pin that represented each park. And we came close. I mean, we did pin trade in every park. And we got a couple that were really park focused, but there were a couple of them just kind of like more generic. But that was just an easy way to connect with cast members. That's really cool.
So next year it's a 6, 7, 8 park challenge. You're gonna do.
That's not a thing, but
yeah, it is, because you're gonna do all of the parks.
Oh, okay, so check this out, Jody. You laughing at me right now?
The Star Wars thing, right, and then you're gonna come to California and do the 3 here. With
so we knocked out. We were down 3. We knocked out 3 parks. We were 3 parks in. We opened a Magic Kingdom, went to Animal Kingdom, and then we were leaving Hollywood Studios. We were on a boat and met this family, or not this family, but this like couple. And this one girl is from California, right?
Yeah.
And we get to talking because we just love talking to people. And she said, and we tell them what we're doing, and they're like, "That's really super cool." She goes, "Check out what I'm about to do." She said, "I'm going back on Thursday to California, but I'm going to get a picture in front of the Magic Kingdom before I leave. I'm going to go to the park. I'm flying to California, and then I'm going to Disneyland in the same day. And I'm going to get a picture in front of the castle there." And I'm like, "Dude, that's awesome." Like that. Yeah. That's like super cool. So
she laid down a challenge. You should do that.
Yeah. Well, we had fun, man. It was a lot of fun until the fourth, when we got to the 4th park though, Epcot, that night, it just dropped, just rained like crazy.
It was supposed to rain. I remember you.
We had to, on our challenge was to watch a fireworks show, and they do fireworks in the rain, but it was pouring, but we're standing there on an umbrella watching the fireworks. It was crazy. But at that point, we were like, "Oh, we're finishing." So we did it. I mean, It was fun, dude. It was just fun. My family's nuts like that. If you look, some people are listening right now. They're like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." Some people are listening and going, I would rather do anything else than that. Like spending that much time in a park doesn't sound fun. I get it. That's fine.
Trent family fun.
That's it, man. We had a good time. Next one we're going to do though, we think we're working on, because we loved it so much, we're creating a new challenge. And we think we're going to do one park one day. And we're going to try to ride every ride in Magic Kingdom and every show in Magic Kingdom as well. Like do the entire park like in one day, which is doable. I mean, some people have done every ride in every park in one day. So surely we can do Magic Kingdom. So, Which means I'm going to have to watch the Tiki Room, which is kind of lame. But, if you got to do it, you got to do it. And the Tiki Room. Have you ever seen that? The birds?
I'll take you. Oh, yeah. Long time ago.
Long time ago when you were a kid. Yeah. So that's my life. People stopped listening. There's like 3 people listening now at this point.
They just skipped ahead. They're just still hitting the skip ahead part until they hear us actually talking about something else.
Well, don't skip ahead before we say this right here. We've got some folks that help us do this thing because we don't make money doing this. It costs money to do this. And we got some folks that love what we do, and more importantly, they love youth pastors and people who invest in youth pastors and youth ministry. YM360 is the biggest of that, and they can help you as well. They do everything. They do Bible study curriculum, student devotionals, DNOW resources, youth leader development, and a timely thing right now is camp for them. They have just, they're getting ready for this summer, but the other thing that they're doing that's super cool is they just released all of the 2020 dates. Super excited for Roger and the team because they are now going to 3 teams in 2020 that'll do. And so that added a ton of dates and options for them.
Yeah.
So I think they're doing, is it 30?
I just talked to him because I was like trying to figure out some camp stuff for us.
Yeah.
Because they don't.
So many options now. But
we're a little too far west for them right now, but not forever.
They're coming for you eventually, though, man. I'm telling you.
Well, they're we're within a few hours.
Yeah. But man, YM360, Youth Ministry 360, super awesome people. They've got resources for you. And then just a real big thank you to the folks over at Georgia Baptist Mission Board, Ricky Smith and all of his guys just helping us out. StudentMinistryNetwork.com. They just love investing in youth pastors as well. And as a result, they're kind of helping us do this. So they've got resources also. You don't have to be Baptist to be a part of it, and you don't have to live in Georgia to be a part of it. So if you're looking for just some help
As
there,
evidenced by me.
that's it. That's it. You're a California boy. So yeah.
I don't know about all that.
Today's episode, super good interview, right? We say that about everybody,
Yeah.
but we only interview great people.
Well, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
There was this one guy on back in episode 50.
36?
36 and 50. And he just keeps hanging around. I don't know. I can't figure out how to bring it up, but it's just awkward every time.
So Ben Trueblood from LifeWay today. And
yeah, Ben's a good guy. He's been on before. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he knows his stuff, man, and loves youth ministry. Is a long timer for sure. So here's a question for you. We're going to be talking specifically about a study that they did years back. That's often referred to as the dropout study. You'll hear us mention that in the podcast. But Jody, a question for you. When it comes to youth ministry, after you've been in it for a little while, which I have, right? One of the things you'll start to experience is when you've seen, once you're 5 or 10 years in, you start to really get a feel for the fruit of your efforts, if you will. Have you struggled over the years seeing kids that have been strong in your youth ministry or involved in your youth ministry all of a sudden dropping out, when they get to college and taking a break from church altogether?
Yeah, no, that never happens to kids who graduate my ministry.
Oh, so you figured out the secret. You should write a book.
Well, you should.
You should write a book on that. Yeah.
No, I think everybody struggles with that, and I think what makes that hard is you start looking at what you did as a youth pastor.
Okay. See, that's where I was going to go with that. Yeah.
Where did I go wrong here? Or did I?
What could I have done differently?
Yeah.
Right?
And so it's heartbreaking. I mean, you hurt for those students. Now, what I have seen, and I'm curious to see about you in this. Like, there have been many of those moments and those students who you look at and you go, "What the heck are you doing? Why are you out?" Where life kind of hits a space for them where they kind of recognize a bit, and I'll get that phone call, and they're well into adult life, or a message on whatever. But they'll reach back out and kind of talk through stuff. And so I think that doesn't always happen. Like, I don't want to paint a picture that's like a constant, but I think that's where the encouragement even in that comes back. It's like, man, yeah, you're grown, and a lot of times now, like, okay, you're married or you have kids, but I'm still your student pastor. I'm still the guy you trust to pick up and call. Now go back to church. But I think, it's hard, man. What about you?
Yeah. It's definitely been a challenge over the years. You see the kids that end up staying, and let's clarify a couple terms here. Ultimately, we know that church attendance doesn't automatically equal walk with Christ, or walk with Christ doesn't automatically equal church attendance. Okay, there's the asterisk in this whole thing. We get that. But that said, generally speaking, we would all agree, I think we'd all agree, that, man, if you're walking with Jesus, you're going to be involved in the church. Ben talks about that a little bit in the interview. So I think it is a fair indication to say, man, when you graduate high school, are you staying involved in some capacity in the local church, including if you go off to college somewhere, are you going to start going to church, or are you just going to do your sorority fraternity thing or whatever and never darken the door of a church or any kind of Bible study or anything? So that said, I've definitely had the kids that fall off the, they just start doing crazy.
You were going to say fall off the wagon.
Yeah, in the sense of,
there's a few that do that too.
Yeah, true. But they just sort of, they, for whatever reason, they walk away from what's normal, and boy, we could dig in all kinds of theories and reasons why. Here's what I would say, though. The reason why this episode is important is we do have a responsibility to acknowledge, one, that this is real and it happens, and then two, to do our best to do ministry in a way that helps students not walk away from their faith or walk away from practicing their faith, maybe would be a better way to say that.
Yeah.
So we need to consider those things. And the great thing has been, he and his team have done some research that'll help us to understand, especially listen towards the second half of the interview. It's not a long interview, because he gives one very specific thing that they discovered that would make a huge difference. And that's the moment where when you listen to podcasts like this, where you kind of have to figure out a takeaway, this would be a takeaway moment. And we'll come back at the end of the interview. You and I can talk about that just a little bit and how that plays out in our world. So I'd be curious about that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think there's a lot here to take away, and certainly a lot to be challenged by, but encouraging, even like in kind of what you're saying.
Oh yeah,
some of the things they found.
Well, that's another thing he says. He talks about the approach they took this year, or on this, not this year, this research project was more of a positive approach than coming at it from a negative. And he talks about that right at the beginning. It's really cool. So,
yeah, good.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, let's jump in here.
Yeah, let's do it.
Here is Ben Trueblood.
And now we're pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
All right, so hey, we're going to start a minute early here with Ben Trueblood. What's up, Ben? How are you, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for hanging out, man. You guys are hanging. You're hanging out all weekend. You guys have a booth here with LifeWay, and you're just hanging out with people
all weekend long. We're here.
Now, here's one thing I will say. That just one thing I already love about you, Ben, is and we've known each other for a little while. But yesterday, I walked up to talk to you a little bit about what we're going to do right now. And one of the things you were hanging out with a guy, and you guys were just talking life, getting into the weeds for a minute about ministry, and that's one of the best things about these conferences.
Yeah, absolutely. It is one of the best things, and man, anytime we go somewhere or phone number, email, like the best thing about what we do is those conversations with youth pastors. That's why we do it.
That's all. So you are the director of student ministries. That sounds very fancy, but ultimately you kind of lead out student ministries in LifeWay, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's good times. Awesome. And so take a minute, tell everybody, how did student ministry happen for you? Because you've been doing this for a long time now.
Yeah.
Not saying you're old, but
getting up there.
You're getting up there, and so you've been doing this a little while. And how did you end up at LifeWay, and kind of what are you doing these days?
Yeah. So started as a middle school pastor in 2000, and
that's because
awesome in the local
people
church
are middle school pastors.
Awesome people. It's true. Awesome people are middle school pastors. Yeah. We did some research recently that I think we're going to get to in a little bit, and some of that was about like, do you like working with middle schoolers and do you like working with high schoolers? And so it's interesting stuff. But so served in local churches along the way, and have been at LifeWay now for 7 years. So
oh wow, that's awesome.
Serve and teach small group of 11th grade boys in the church that I'm in now, but
not middle school.
Not middle school. I did that. My son's in middle school, so I'm giving him a little bit of a breather there. But yeah, so serving still in student ministry from a volunteer capacity, and just because I love it. Like I didn't want to go work in a student ministry organization and not still be connected to student ministry in some way.
I love it.
So.
And that's really a core, and we don't want to dig too deep into it, but that's a core value. You as a guy leading a team, that's a core value that you're asking your team. I remember when I came out, I came out a couple years ago and hung out a little bit at LifeWay for a thing, and everybody working in your office, you're really hoping that they all serve in ministry.
Yeah, and kind of beyond hoping, like
it's an expectation.
Like I ask it in interviews, and like, hey, how are you going to plug into student ministry when you move here, and things like that. So
that's cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's good. So, current things happening in your life. You've got a couple books coming out, or they've just come out actually. So, talk about those for a second, and maybe let's dig into one of them.
Yeah, just released middle of January. So, one is called Within Reach, and it's based around the newest research that we've just done on how teenagers stay connected to the church once they graduate high school and move out of our student ministry. So the original, what had become known as the dropout study, which I think it was named in kind of a negative connotation, so it's
right.
But that was done 11 years ago. And so we wanted to come back and redo some of the pieces of that study to see where we are today.
Yeah.
And LifeWay Research originally did that study 11 years ago. So we wanted to redo that and kind of give the update on where we are, as well as maybe ask the same question so that we're comparing apples to apples, but also put some other things in there that we wanted to find out. and even research on student pastors so that we could layer the data over itself and say, okay, students are saying these things after they've graduated student ministry. Student pastors are doing and behaving this way. Maybe there's some correlation that we can see to what's going on. So that's kind of the approach that we took.
The positive then, like instead of here's why they're leaving, here's kind of why they're staying. And
yeah, I think there's both. One of the reasons why we called the book Within Reach is because we wanted to let people know that, like, yes, 66% of teenagers when they enter their college years are dropping out of the church. But what we saw in the research is that hope is within reach. Like, there are things that we can do practically right now in student ministry to really impact that number. We didn't see in the research that a total overhaul of student ministry is needed, but that there is a lot of power in small changes that can be made along the way.
That's great.
So that's kind of the approach that we want to take. We still use the word dropout because of the previous study and to make things consistent, but it still just doesn't sit right. Because I want to approach it from a positive angle and not just say, man, this is what's going wrong. Because there are a lot of things that are happening that are right.
Yeah. Out of that research, another book came out of that as well, right?
Man, it's interesting.
You said,
So the other book that we released last in middle of January it's called A Different College Experience.
Okay.
So I wrote that with a friend of mine. His name's Brian Mills. He's a college pastor in Northwest Arkansas. And that book actually came about before the research was done. They released the same time, but they're not really correlated, but they are because they're similar. So A Different College Experience is meant for high school seniors that are getting ready to graduate. Maybe read that along with parents. It's a good read for parents to kind of have conversations in that home that last year before they leave, as well as those beginning their college journey. So it's just... That one came about. Brian and I were at a conference together. We were sitting on a bus going to this next piece of this conference, and he had just made the transition to college ministry. And I asked him, now that you're getting students on the other side of student ministry, what would you do differently if you went back to be a student pastor to prepare them better for those college years? And out of that conversation became A Different College Experience, the book. And so we're excited about that opportunity. It's kind of like if I could say one last thing, if Brian could say one last thing to students as they leave our student ministries, what would that last thing be? And so that's the genesis of that.
That's good.
Yeah.
So then from the research, I know there's one piece in particular that Chris and I have talked about that's come out, and it's this idea of adults investing.
Yeah.
Can you flesh that out for us a little?
Absolutely. And so the idea of adults investing and the importance of that is not a new idea in student ministry, right?
Sure.
And the fact that, hey, if you have multiple adults investing, like, that's a good thing. It's going to be better for discipleship. It's going to be better for lifelong faith, things like that. But what's great about what we found in the research is that idea has now accelerated to be the number one indicator of whether or not a teenager stays connected to church after high school.
Wow.
Is the number of adults that are investing in their life. And we even found a tipping point to that number. So when a person in high school who's active in the church, when they have 3 or more adult spiritual mentors, they're 3 times more likely to stay connected to the church during their college years. And while we wouldn't say like the goal of student ministry is to just build church attendance, somebody who is walking closely with Jesus and has a growing active faith will be connected to a church.
That's fair.
Right?
That's a fair indicator.
Yeah. So that's, and it's also measurable. So that's the approach we took there. And man, that 3 number, and that's not including parents, by the way. So if you have parents in the home who are actively discipling and involved in spiritual conversations, things like that, then, that's a multiplier as well. But this is church-based spiritual mentors, 3 or more, you're 3 times more likely to stay connected. So it's a powerful statistic.
Well, and what I love about that is that 3 seems like within reach, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Like any church can find 3 people to pour in. So you're not saying you got to have 20. You're not saying you got to have. I mean, man, 3 is doable. for
It is.
anybody.
And the way we kind of break it down, there are many ways to do it, and context plays a factor here and all that. But one of the ways that we break it down, student pastor can be one, right?
Yeah.
Student pastor or spouse can be like that. That's definitely could be one of those. Your small group leader, whether that's a Sunday school class or a Tuesday home group or whatever. And then if you do some type of other discipleship environment, you're at your 3, right?
Yeah.
Or if there's somebody who you have there are always those volunteers in student ministry that like, they don't serve on a weekly basis, but they're like the 9th grade boys disciple now home every year. Like
right.
that.
Yeah, totally.
From that, relationships form and can be one of those 3. So like you said, Jody, like it's doable. Like we can actually do this.
So as a parent, if I'm sitting here, if I'm thinking, okay, because I have teenagers, a 9th grader, 12th grader, a teacher, even a coach, even if I'm intentionally trying to think, man, if I'm trying to be intentional to say, hey, man, that person could be that for my kid as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that coach or teacher that's a follower of Jesus that spends time and builds that relationship and uses
but with
the
some
platform that they've been
intentionality,
given.
though, not just
absolutely
happens to be a Christian
not
teacher.
just my coach is a Christian, but somebody that actually takes time to invest in that. For your kids, for example, to invest in your kid. Yeah, that could fall into that number. What the other thing that we saw, and this is kind of a little bit of a cringe moment,
all right,
is that so we saw that that's the case, right? And in the student pastor part of the research, we also saw that there is a pretty large gap in the time spent that student pastors are spending training volunteers. So here we have this number one indicator. Adult spiritual mentors are the ones who really move the needle on a teenager staying connected to the church, yet we don't do a great job of continually coaching and discipling and training those adult volunteers. But the good news is that's something that we can do too, right? Through social media and there are ways now to train volunteers consistently that just weren't around 20 years ago, right? And so I think using the tools that we have, we can up the game in training, which the end result is discipleship of teenagers.
I'm also hearing those adults that we're talking about training, part of that training is to make sure they understand that, it's awesome that you're willing to volunteer to hang out with kids.
Yeah.
We need you.
That's right.
But we need you to be more than a fun adult in their life. We need that to go a little deeper. We need you to be having discipleship conversations.
Much deeper than that.
We need you to be talking about Jesus with them, and you've got to get to it. But most adults are probably freaking out a little bit about it. I mean, the average volunteer adult may not be supernatural for them, but that's where that's our responsibility to help create a culture where they understand how they can make those conversations happen. Yeah,
absolutely. It's not just adult spiritual mentor would not just be I'm around and I know that person cares for me, but it's somebody that walks intentionally with them that can help them learn how to apply Scripture in the moment to the real things they're dealing with in their lives. And I think one of the magic things about having multiple adults is that they hear different perspectives of people's real walks with Jesus. So adult number 1 may be walking through this issue and applying Scripture and dealing with this issue, while adult number 3 is walking through something or had something in their past happen that's totally different. So the teenager, by having multiple adult influences, is seeing how God's Word and the faith of these adults applies in different ways and different perspectives. So they get this idea of, man, this relationship with Jesus thing, like it really matters to these people. It really works. It really is real. Like they do this in their daily life every day and in different ways. And so I think that's what's powerful about it. To your point, that's beyond just hanging out.
Yes.
It takes a relationship that's centered around God's Word and somebody who's willing to dive into what is probably the messy life of a teenager and to reveal in a little bit of appropriate transparency a little bit of the mess that's going on in their life too.
Yeah, it's more than showing up and teaching a lesson. It's more than it's really doing life alongside them.
Yeah.
Inviting them into their life.
Yeah, and that takes training.
That takes training.
For most people to know what's appropriate transparency, right?
Right.
And here's how you help them apply God's Word. All of those things take training.
Oh, that's good.
The overwhelming part of this for me, as I hear this, just being really honest, is when I think of the average kid in my culture that I'm serving in, and the average parenting style of get my kid involved in as much as possible to help them be a success one day.
Yeah.
They're playing so many sports or so many activities, so many things, so many do it. When I think of the average kid in my culture, like, they don't have much room left for what you're talking about. That
Right.
seems overwhelming to me, but that's where the fight is. I mean,
Yeah.
ultimately, that's where we have to dig in.
Yeah, it's a fight with time, and I think what we have to trust, if I could Jesus juke us a little bit in
Juke
this
us, baby,
moment.
juke us. Come on.
I think that's where we have to trust in those moments that as a teenager's heart begins to be transformed into being more like Jesus, where they begin to live out what Jesus earned for them in the perfect life, what he's claimed for them in holiness and righteousness, as they begin to understand that and live that out, that would begin to transform the other things in their life, and that would begin to transform even the choices that they make and the activities that they're, and not to say that when somebody begins walking with Jesus that they stop doing all these other things, but maybe they begin doing all these other things as a mission field, which adds on to that discipling environment that we've been talking about.
So reclaiming some of those moments.
Yeah, because an
spiritual
adult,
sense, yeah.
an adult volunteer or a student pastor that has one of these kinds of students that begins to equip them to be a missionary on their volleyball team or the math team or the band or whatever it is, that connection with that adult as they're training them to be a missionary,
Right.
that's one of these other really important relationships.
It's good.
That's good.
Well, Ben, thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you,
let's
guys.
Take a moment and tell everybody where they can find you on social media, that
Yeah.
world, and then also from a resource standpoint, how LifeWay can help folks that are listening as well.
Perfect. So social media-wise, at Ben Trueblood on all of the stuff. So would love to connect with you guys there. And then the two books, A Different College Experience is the one meant for high school seniors and young people beginning their college journey, as well as parents to read alongside of them. And Within Reach is the other book that has the research in it, and that one's written towards a church leader audience. So there's going to be practical, some of the stuff we talked about today, really practical action steps according to the research. And yeah.
Great. Awesome, man.
Awesome. Thanks for
Thank you,
taking some
Ben.
time,
Appreciate it, Ben.
Yeah,
See
thank
ya.
you guys.
Yep.
I like Ben. He's the man.
Yeah, man, those guys and gals are getting it done, man. I mean, they're just super committed. So digging in specifically, Jody, what do you think about the whole three adults to one kid idea?
Well, I think that's attainable. I think that's where even before, when we were setting up the interview there, like that's kind of the thing where that's within reach for any given context, right? And
Yeah, right. Yeah, and
we
that's why
talked about
that's
that,
why I called the book Within Reach. And you should go out and buy
Yeah.
the book, by the way, if you're listening. We'll put it in the show notes page. But yeah, I mean, that is within reach. That's a fairly, and if they can, and they've discovered these, through this research, they've discovered this as a thing that can really make a huge difference there. And I would even add to it, one of the things, don't miss this because we didn't spend a lot of time. Part of that is in the training. So friends, if you're listening and you don't feel like you do a great job training your workers right now, and specifically training them in this area, this would be an area where you may also, another takeaway would be to say, hey, I probably need to learn how to train my adults, learn how to invest in them. And that would be where you just have to become a little bit of an expert in that area. And honestly, one little secret in that, and we could probably do a whole episode on this, but have we done an episode on this before? On like training workers? Has that happened?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I
that
mean,
might
we've
be
talked
good
about
one.
it a lot, but I don't know if we did a whole episode.
Well, one specific one big secret here is, when I go out and do trainings at churches, and Jody, when you go out and do trainings or at conferences and all that stuff, here's how it started. It started with you with a piece of paper going, hey, how are 5 ways that I think an adult could do a better job investing in a kid from a discipleship standpoint? And then you write down 5 ideas, and then you flesh those out, and then you share them with your leaders. Do a little research, make yourself look like a professional, and then boom, And so it's taking the time to be intentional about that. But ultimately, it's funny. We think like youth pastors, and so we say, "Oh, well, obviously, my goal would not just be help a kid have fun and enjoy this. I would want them to also be discipled." We think like that. But I don't think necessarily our volunteers all automatically think that way. I think some of them think, man, if I show up on Sunday morning and I keep the kids in line and make sure those 7th grade guys don't do anything stupid, I'm doing a pretty good job.
Yeah. I don't think we spent all day yesterday here with all of our student ministry guys from all the campuses working on.
You do more meetings than anybody I know, just for what it's worth.
Oh my gosh, tell me about it, man. Tell me about it. Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole nother episode. But we were talking about this idea: how do we better equip and train our volunteers for ministry, and specifically kind of for our approach to that and philosophy of that. And one of the things that continues to come out is that as student pastors, we often make a lot of assumptions about other people, and particularly our volunteers, but even other student pastors. And so some things that may seem very, even like you're saying, oh, that's obvious about investing, that may not be the case when it comes to your volunteers or your leaders. They may not do that. And the other thing is, I think some of them may see the importance of that. They may want to do that, but they don't know how. And so again, for you, it may seem really obvious, how to show up at a game, how to send a letter or a card, how to have a conversation even with a student that you may not know super well. But a lot of your volunteers probably aren't as comfortable, don't know how to do that as naturally as you do. And if you're not intentionally thinking through that training, then you're really short. You're kind of being short-sighted when it comes to the effectiveness of your team. So I think you have to always come in without assumption.
Yeah. Yeah, for real, man. That's just huge. It just matters.
Yeah, that's good.
It's good. Well, good episode. I do recommend the book. I have it. I bought it after the interview, and
it's good. And it's not a huge book. Like you could,
it's easy.
No, it's an easy read, and it's well written. So it's good.
Yeah, I had to buy it though. Ben, you'd have thought Ben could have just handed it. There was a whole stack of them, literally 15 yards from where we were talking. But
listen, man, you're an author. You got to make that money.
Yeah. That's comical is what that is. 3 years in it, I got my first royalty check the other day. I probably shouldn't even say that kind of stuff out loud. 3 years in. I'm very thankful. I'm not complaining, but it's just, sometimes when I'm talking to guys that are like, hey, write a book. And I'm like, just make sure you understand one thing about that.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds really cool getting a royalty check. I mean,
Oh, I don't mind saying it out loud. It was $50.
Yeah. I was going to say,
I probably shouldn't say that kind of stuff out loud, but I kind of wear it all out there in the open. $50. That was after 3 years. Now I had a little bit, to be fair, I had you get up front, you get like a, whatever.
Oh yeah. Sure.
Advance or whatever. It was $1 million on the advance. So yeah, okay, it wasn't even close, or even.
So the moral of the story is, I think what everyone's learned today is if you want to make money in the youth ministry world, it's through podcasting
and book
and writing books.
Oh yeah, so much money.
Wow, that's so funny. I do get that question a lot, and from people. I'm like, nope, definitely not rolling. Podcasting did not add to. To the coffer.
It's all good. But hey, but the reward is through the people.
Listen, your jewels in your crown, right? So, one thing I will say, through
things like this though. I had lunch the other day with Jack Dodge. Jack, if you've listened to this point, you're a great guy. Jack is one of our listeners, and he's close. He's nearby, and so he came over. He's doing some school stuff nearby, and he and I had lunch. So that part is worth it, man, because Jack's a great guy, dude. Getting married. Or hopefully at some point in the future, he's thinking, and
I hope his girlfriend doesn't listen.
Yeah, I hope so
may
too.
have
Because I
just-
may have just thrown
dang.
something. Like a
You
potential.
may have just started
something.
something that he now has to.
Yeah,
live
they're
up
just
to.
girlfriends at this point, boyfriend. But I think they both know they kind of like each other a lot. They're kind of in love.
Come on, Jack. What you waiting for, man?
Yeah, dude. What if we had our first proposal
On air. On
on air?
No pressure, man.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever.
But all 13 listeners are listening into that.
Yeah. So
Hey, I'll put links to all of Ben's stuff in the show notes
good.
page as well as the book. I'm also going to link to episode 7, I believe, which was with Steve Parr. He's with the Georgia Baptist Mission Board. It's a book now. When he was on originally, that was fairly new, but a book called Why They Stay. So similar.
It's good.
Similar topic and research, although it's the stuff with Ben is newer. They just have done that. So maybe helpful if you're curious about all of that. So head over to the show notes page at thelongerhaul.com/episode 086. Again, make sure you subscribe to the show. And if you haven't already joined our super secret podcast group, man, we would love to have you join that group. We like those guys. It's fun.
Good,
and we haven't done any giveaways in there a while. We need to do some more.
Yeah.
So.
True.
It's been busy. It's like, I had somebody had to go move or something. But anyway, I think that'll about do it for today.
That's it.
Got anything else?
Catch you next week. It's good.
Cool.
Later.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast at www.thelongerhaul.com.